Smith, Placerville, founder of Compass to Obscurity, devoted to truth, justice, and helping to sure I get an extra 2 minutes to speak. What I wanted to point out is that you're at best on this project putting the cart before the horse. You have a lot of questions that are answered. For example, you're in the midst of having an environmental impact report done about this project. There are several proposals for site location for the proposed courthouse. One of them is a much smaller project and entails only the criminal cases. If you had that map up there right now, you'd see that the swap is not comparable. You're not talking about transferring property that would be comparable because one's landlocked and one's not landlocked. Mr. Michalako ran for office successfully by pointing out how the public was bamboozled in another similar situation where you bought some landlocked property that was underwater and nobody could use it. So if you look at this now, you have a study that's not even completed. You, in addition, have a committee you're proposing where you look at the economic consequences. So you're putting the cart before the horse. Or in the case of the rabbit and Alice in Wonderland, now you're going to have the verdict and then you're going to have the trial. You're going to look at the facts afterwards. The economic impact of closing the downtown courthouse would be absolutely devastating. You haven't looked at those things. Have any of you ever asked merchants on Main Street what the economic impact is of that courthouse? I have, and it ranges between 5 and 20%. It's not just the obvious watering holes like the restaurants, the bars, the coffee shops. People like John Sanders, who has the Old Town Grill, it's been there for a dozen years, says he'd be out of business if you close that courthouse. It's also places like, talk to Mary Duffy at the Placerville Hardware's, at the Placerville newsstand and talk to Albert and David Bausel at the Placerville Hardware Store. Those are businesses that have been on Main Street for nearly 300 years. Those are people who will tell you that they are impacted by the courthouse. So right now you have a lot of different proposals on the table. And the real reason that you're taking it up now happens to be that John Briggs' options are about to expire. They expire this month. He came before you a few months ago and told you that. Now, you're all fiscally conservative politicians who tell us about we're not going to bail out the auto industry, the banks and things like that. Well, don't bail out the Briggs family. I mean, I heard politicians like Tom McClintock tell people who were on the brink of having their banks foreclose on them that it's part of the free enterprise system. You know, you have winners and losers. Well, you're going to have some losers in the case of, okay, so his options expire. Let them expire. You can come back and renegotiate them next year when you finally have the environmental impact report done. You don't have a site plan. They haven't made a decision like that. So it's no different than the same thing you campaigned, among other things, about. The way that you operated before, where you bought a property and you didn't look at it closely. So that's what I think you ought to look at, is consider this, look at the facts very closely. If you start to look at, if you had that map up there now and went with some colored pencils, highlighters on all the property owned by supervisors, past and present, as well as friends and family, it'd start to look like a Christmas tree. These are the kind of facts you need to look at first before you make a decision. That's what I respectfully suggest. If anything, you should table it so you have a chance to look at these facts. The public has got a stack. You've got a stack. If you're able to go through all that every week, that's amazing. I commend you. But the public doesn't have a chance to really know about the consequences of something like this that's going to have a major adverse impact on the city of Placerville. That's why I suggest that you put the facts before you make a decision. And one of them would be to wait for the environmental impact report to be done, because one of the options has to do with site planning that's dramatically different from what you proposed with the land swap. Again, don't bail out the Briggs family. Let the free enterprise system work. Thank you.
Any